So don't read into this and go, okay, so it is better for me to take some time off because the majority of students are taking time off, and therefore that's what I should do. You can't make that assumption. The Old PreMeds Podcast, session number 314. Welcome to the Old PreMeds Podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here, where I take your questions, your non-traditional pre-med questions, and answer them here on the podcast. Now, what I want to do today, before we jump in to our great question that took me a little bit of time to research, is talk about the MCAT Minute, brought to you by Blueprint MCAT. As we're recording this, it is mid-October, and you know what time that is? It's time to register for the MCAT come next year. Historically, mid-October is when registration dates are open to save your spot for a January, March, or April MCAT. So if you're taking the MCAT during those times for next year to apply next year, and you notice how I'm not giving a year, so because this is just, it's the same every year. If you're taking the MCAT kind of January, March, April, October is when you want to start looking at your registration for the MCAT. Go save that seat to make sure you have a spot in your local testing center so you don't have to travel, stay at a hotel, get a sleepless night before your test, all of that fun stuff. Before we jump in, though, I do want to mention, as the MCAT Minute was brought to you by Blueprint MCAT, go to blueprintmcat.com, sign up for a free account, go get a study planner tool. That study planner tool is free with the Blueprint MCAT free account, and you can plan out if you're going to register now to take the test sometime in the next few months. Go check out, make sure your study plan is set. Plan the work the plan. That's how we get things done. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our episode today. Today, the question is, are non-trads becoming more common? Are there more non-trads now than before? And so I had to really think about this question. Number one, what's the point of the question? Because to me, the question is like, what's the point of the question? Okay, so there's more non-trads, or okay, there's not more non-trads. What does that do for you? How does that help you on your journey to medical school? And ultimately, my answer was, I don't think it does. But let's try to answer it anyway. So number one, who cares about the question? Number two, let's dig into the question. So the question is, are there more non-trads now? Well, how do you define a non-trad? Non-trad is a very non-specific term that we just kind of throw around as anyone who doesn't go down the normal path of high school to undergrad, apply to medical school during the junior year of your undergrad, graduate in kind of April, May, June, whatever your graduation time is, that spring of your senior year, your last semester there, and then start medical school right after that, okay? So you're starting medical school right after you graduate from undergrad. That is the typical definition of a traditional student. And so anyone who doesn't follow that path is, I guess, a non-traditional student. And so that's the assumption that I'm making here. The definition of a non-traditional student is someone who doesn't go straight from undergrad to medical school. And that was the easiest thing to kind of look for. Unfortunately, the AAMC doesn't give a lot of archive data on this. But if you Google MSQ, which is the Matriculating Student Questionnaire, the medical schools offer students who are starting medical school, and I don't remember if I did this or not, but they offer medical students to go, hey, take this questionnaire. It's data for the AAMC to do research, to publish, to provide to other students, to provide to medical schools, to help everyone in this journey. So I was able to pull a 2016 MSQ, and the way that the MSQ works is that it typically has 3 years worth of data. So 2016 MSQ includes 2014 data and 2015 data. And then we have the newest MSQ, which is 2021. So we have from 2014 to 2021 to see what do those trends look like. Now, Again, this is just trends from a questionnaire. I'm not sure how much information this gives you, how much action that you can take based on this data. But you asked the question, so I'll give you the information. And the information says in 2024, as I'm looking at this, 2024, students who took less than 1 year between graduation of undergrad and start of medical school was 42.1%. They were the majority category in 2014. 36.4% took 1 to 2 years. 12.6% took 3 to 4. And then 8.9% took 5 or more years off. That 8.9% I think is interesting. I think that's more of the true non-trad of like, hey, I'm changing careers. I'm coming back. Don't forget about me. I'm changing my mind. Hopefully I'm not too old. Those are the ones that I'm like, am I too old for this? Those 5 or more years, people. So that number is interesting because that number keeps going down. Although it comes back up a little bit near the end. And the other numbers, specifically the less than 1 year and 1 to 2 years, change pretty drastically. So let's take a look. So 42.1. Let's talk about the 1 to 2 years. Let's ignore the less than 1 year. The majority of the gains that the 1 to 2 year folks make are from the less than 1 year. Okay. So 36.4% 1 to 2 years, 2014. 38.3 in 2015, 39.4 in 2016. So it went up 3 percentage points from 2014 to 2016. 2017, 41.4. So it made 2-point jump from 16 to 17. 42.7 in 2018. All the way up to 43.9% in 2019, 44.1% in 2020, and 44.8% in 2021. From 36.4% of those who are answering the survey, remember it's survey data, so it's not always the best data, survey data, 2014, 36.4% of students said that they took between 1 to 2 years off between graduating undergrad and matriculating medical school, starting medical school. In 7 years, 2014 to 2021, that went up 8 percentage points, almost 8.5 percentage points to 44.8%. Now the majority number. Okay? Let's look at the 3 to 4 years. That went from 12.6 to 15.2. So that number went up as well. The more than 5 years kind of stayed flat, 8.9, and it's 8.5 now. It dropped all the way down to 7.9 at one point, but it's 8.5% now. And that less than 1 year, that quote unquote traditional person who we assume is that traditional person is someone who went straight from college to medical school, 42.1% in 2014 to 31.4% in 2021. Almost 10% drop. Okay? So there's some changing. Now, the question is why, and we don't know why, right? Ultimately, we don't know why this is happening. I can make some assumptions based on how much I hear you guys talk, how I hear you interpret this data. Unfortunately, you interpret this data, some of you interpret this data as, oh, it's better to be a non-traditional student because more people are non-traditional. And you can't come to that conclusion. That is potentially one conclusion, but you can't land on that as the conclusion, right? The change of people going straight from undergrad to medical school can have a lot of different reasons. My assumption is that a lot of people, since I've been doing this for 10 years, talking to students and learning more about this process and talking to other people, is life is just getting more hectic. There's more stress, more confusion, more just everything about this process. And the MCAT is something that people are taking a lot more seriously because they're understanding the ramifications of a good MCAT score or a bad MCAT score. And more, I am hearing students delay applying to medical school, purposefully taking a gap year so that they can take the MCAT after they graduate college. And potentially, that is a reason why students are taking more time between graduating college and starting medical school, is they're just taking the MCAT when they're not taking classes. That doesn't mean it's better to take the MCAT without taking classes. It just means that there are potentially a larger percentage of people who are taking the MCAT outside of college once they graduate. Again, this data doesn't give us why. It's just numbers. So don't read into this and go, okay, so it is better for me to take some time off because the majority of students are taking time off, and therefore that's what I should do. You can't make that assumption here. You can't come to that conclusion based on this data. It's just numbers. It's just what has happened. We don't know why it's happening. We need those Freakonomics masters to come in and put together a real study. And that's kind of what we're trying to do at Mappd as we continue to grow, as we continue to gather more data, is we'll start to ask these really important questions and ask them in a way that we can draw conclusions, that we can start making conclusions so that you as a learner, as a student, have the best data possible to make decisions for you and your future as a physician, as a PA, as a whatever, as we grow. Remember, Mappd is not just for pre-med students. Right now, it's pre-med and pre-PA, and as we grow, it'll help more and more students. So there's the answer to the question, are there more non-trads? Based on the strict definition of traditional being less than a year between graduation of undergrad and starting medical school? Yeah, there are. There are more of us. I was one of them. I took 3 years off in between. So are there more? Yeah. Why are there more? And is it better to be a non-trad? We don't know the answers to that. So don't jump to conclusions. Just know that based on the data, that's what we have. Hopefully that was helpful. Took me a while to find some of these older reports, so I hope that was useful for you. If you like this kind of stuff, this is actually why I started Medical School Headquarters back in the day, was to look at data and give you information based on data. So hopefully this was helpful. If you want more of it, let me know. Don't forget to check out Blueprint MCAT, our sponsor of the Old PreMeds podcast. Go get that study planner tool. Plan the work the plan. That's how you get things done. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here on the Old PreMeds podcast.